Hello, 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 everyone. It is Kenyon here. It is Basketball Rewind, and another week has gone by in Raptors land. Whether whether you enjoyed the week or not, depending on where you land on what you want us to do, we escaped the week either way. We had four games. We split them. Maybe not in the way that we thought that they would for some. For others, maybe we did. Uh, what I will say is that if you don't like that, you don't like NBA basketball because that was a roller coaster of a week, in my opinion, for every game. You are getting heartbreak, you are getting excitement, you are getting, hey, uh, let me tell you something that was entertaining at the very bare minimum. So, uh, just to go through the past week really quickly before we get into the good, bad, and ugly. I'm gonna say we faced the Wizards first, the Bucks second, I believe the Celtics, and then Detroit, which we just saw in that specific order. So, um, we won against the Wizards. We lost against the Bucks, so the Bucks got their revenge, indeed. And the Celtics beat us again. Although that was a very close game, it was back and forth, and I think that that was a very winnable game. We'll get into that for sure. And of course, we beat Detroit. Now, Detroit was missing a lot of players, but we should be beating Detroit. Detroit is, I believe, now on an 11-game losing streak, if I'm not mistaken.
I want to say 10.
10? Okay.
I've
So
lost the pain is too much at this point.
all I know is I saw like 2-10 or something like that at one point, or either yesterday or whatever. But um, we will be previewing the future soon enough. But let's get into the good. So, Beyond, would you like to take it away with what you thought was a positive?
I mean, in some strange way, I would just say the positive was the week itself from the standpoint of it was actually a conventional week for the Raptors. And what
Yeah.
I mean by that is when we left last week, we thought that okay, they might split, but we thought in true Raptor fashion it would be some unconventional way. They would beat, like say, Boston, and then lose to Detroit or some craziness like that. But it was conventional. They beat the teams they were supposed to beat, and they lost the teams you expect them to beat. Now, it's good overall, but they did leave a little meat on that bone there with Milwaukee because they had an opening there, when a certain individual was not playing, and they let that one slide. Where it's like, oh, there's a possibility. However, overall, how the team is playing, it's still uneven, but we're seeing glimmers of some hope. There's light at the end of the tunnel with some of this on our offensive woes. I think we'll get into this more a little later, perhaps when we have our guests. But I think that was a positive for me overall, where we have some semblance of what we're trying to do in the half court, at least a little bit. It's painstaking to watch it get to this point, but we're slowly getting there.
Yeah, like the good for me has been one guy, and I'm probably going to sound like I'm a fan of his. I am a fan of him, but I'm a fan of also the Raptors in general. So Pascal this week in these last four games, in 31 minutes on average, this including today's game, he's averaging 24, 8 rebounds, 6 assists, a steal, 61% from the field, 12.5% from three. A little bad, but he hit his first one today. 65% from the free throw line, which is not good. Got to get up to 80%. He's been he's been plus 37 in those 5 games in total when he's on the floor. It's really good. He has taken over in the games that he's been playing in particular, Washington. You don't win without Pascal. That was in a game that shouldn't have been a game, really. The rest of the team did not play well. Pascal played very well. Scotty was pretty good in that game, but we've seen him play better for sure. But they had no answer for him. Pascal constantly got the ball. Against Boston, he was cooking in the first quarter, and then he got into foul trouble. Darko brought him back in. He continued to cook that whole game. Jason Tatum, nope, didn't do anything with him. Porzingis, nope, didn't do anything with him. Jaylen Brown, same thing. Pascal has arguably been the best player in all of those games for this week, whoever they played against. The only game he didn't do so well against was Milwaukee. The whole team was really bad against Milwaukee either. So my good for this week has been Pascal Siakam.
Yeah, I mean, I'll start off just with Pascal just because you just mentioned Pascal. He did a really good job. I mean, he's been getting to the line every single game, but because he's changed, along with the coaching staff, of course, where he's getting the ball and how he's getting his offense, you have seen those free throw numbers tick up. Um, Early on in the season, it was like 2 free throws, occasionally 5, one game or another where he got 4, but most of the times it was 2 or 3 attempts. Now he's getting to the line. I don't, for Basketball Reference, they haven't included the Detroit game yet. So take out that game, look at the rest of the week. 6.7. That's back up to where he usually is, which is around 7 trips a game. You need that to control games. I've said it time and time again. His 3-point attempts are definitely going down, but at the same time, in those past few games, as much to the the dismay of some people who are obsessed with the 3-point shot, nothing wrong with the 3-point shot. I do think it is important. I do think it's essential since we do have that line in basketball now that exists. However, he is shooting 62.5% from the field, not including that. I agree, though. I do want him to hit better free throws. We will get into that a little bit later on. In terms of the other good is him and Scotty. The assist numbers are going up. The turnovers overall are going down. And I think that they are finding their stride. This coach does seem to be amenable to learning. He is learning a little bit. Might take a little bit of time, but he is learning in terms of how to incorporate his guys, basically. Not everyone's going to like what I'm about to say, but I'll say one other thing. He was asked directly, Darko that is, about Siakam's leadership during the Washington game, a game that realistically we kind of stole that game, and we shouldn't have been stealing that game. That was one hell of a performance. I will say that, where he just said, "To heck with this, give me the damn ball, get out the way," and he scored 39 points, I believe 11 rebounds, as well as 7 assists, and that's right, he also had 3 steals. Like it's kind of crazy. I lost my train of thought just a little bit there with Pascal, but you were going to say something, Coach, real quick.
Yeah, I want to give Scotty a bit of a shout out too. He's basically in his last 4 games this week, he's been at his average, what he was before that. So he's averaging around 20 points, 7 rebounds, almost 7 assists. But I think one of the big keys here, actually, shooting 53% from 3 in those 4 games. That includes the Detroit game today where he shot 3 of 4. He was 3 of 3. I think that was against Milwaukee. He was 2 of 6 against Boston from 3 as well. He was a plus 37 today on the floor against Detroit. I get it, it's Detroit, stuff like that. But the young man so far, for the most part, the numbers are staying steady as they were before this week had started as well. So kudos to him for just keeping it consistent thus far.
Absolutely, and I know not everyone's going to be happy about Barnes' numbers taking a little bit of a dive overall from the field, but this is where you expect him to be, which is kind of, sorry for the pun here for Raptors fans, but steady Freddy, right? You want him to kind of be even. You want him to become someone who is able to raise floors. I don't think he's quite there yet, but the fact that his production and his impact is always there, regardless of whether or not his shot is there on a given night, it's there. And you are now seeing, I guess, a much cleaner pathway to the next step of his evolution as a player. So I think that these are all good things. But yeah, now going back to my last point just about Siakam, sorry, it's long-winded about Siakam, people, but Darko talked about his leadership, really, in that Wizards loss, and I wrote it down, actually. And what he said is, I'll tell you what, every single day he's upbeat, full of energy. I really appreciate his leadership. He is talking to the guys, he's more vocal and really embracing that specific role on this team. I'm grateful for the way that he is coachable and how he's treating his teammates and really everyone in the organization. Uh, can't get a better glowing review during this tryout towards the next 20 games to see if he can make the team. Uh, so, with that being said, yeah, Scotty, I've already said what I need to say. And also, we have now, it seems like we're now finding what works and what doesn't in terms of different bench units. And we're slowly getting to something that's a little bit more manageable. So, with that being said, if no one else, anything else to add, we'll go to the bad.
Another really solid third quarter from Siakam when facing a deficit. What are you sort of seeing from him, like from a leadership standpoint, especially when facing those type of deficits?
I'll tell you what, he is every single day upbeat and full of energy, and I really appreciate his leadership. He's talking to all the guys every single day. He's more vocal. He's really embracing the role on this team, and I'm grateful the way he is coachable and the way he is treating his teammates and everybody.
Any last takers? Otherwise, beyond, you can start with the bad.
Okay. It's going to be odd for me to say so, considering what you just mentioned just now. But man, my bad's got to be Darko, man. I'm sorry. It's been a rough week, man. A rough week. Just
I tried.
Yeah, man. I mean, good for you, man. I'm glad you tried, man. It's always good to have the positivity, man. But there's some things where I really question, should he be, is he an NBA caliber coach at this point? There's some things I saw this week. Some of for example, let's go with the most obvious one, Boston game, and the first quarter, I believe we have 5 bench dudes out there against the Boston Celtics. Are you kidding me? I mean, I couldn't believe what I was seeing out there. That was hilarious. And then we had to hustle to get Scotty back in. That was bad, man. There's some other stuff there when it comes to question about certain guys on the court with it as well too. And the same battle, which is really in my mind what's holding us back the most at this moment. The question is, how much will Darko get out of his own ego to get this team to play to their maximum potential? Now, there have been some positives as of today's game in Detroit. But I only say it's only one game, folks. As a beloved Pistons fan, I gotta say it. It's the Pistons. I'm just gonna tell you, okay, like this. We'll see when we move through the rest of the week what this looks like. But if he gets out of his own way, his own ego of what he sees as his vision with his team, he's just gotta realize this is the personnel I have and work towards my strengths. And I think in some ways that cost us a couple of games already this season. In a way, you could make an argument almost cost us Washington's game. I think it cost us, in this case here, I think in some ways it cost us the Boston game to some extent, as well as some other things we'll get into it a little later. But yeah, the Darko situation, to me, that's why I'm watching. More than any player, I'm watching him. And if he's learning from this and how quickly he can address it.
Yeah, the bad for me has been some of the things that Darko has done. The rotations outside the Pistons game today. Now, I know they had OG back. OG's a massive help when he came back. But the rotations have not been good. Pairing Precious and Boucher and Flynn and one of Grady and Scotty, that just did not go well against Boston or Milwaukee. Second quarters for this team. We're shooting 30% from 3 in the second quarter, but we're also a minus 3.2 on the season. First halves, mainly the second quarter, but first halves have not been good in this 4 or 5 game stretch. This offense and this team at times, even the defense, but this team is very much Jekyll and Hyde. You just don't know what you're going to get. Am I going to get Hyde in the first quarter and Dr. Jekyll in the second half? Or what am I going to get? So that little bit of consistency just is not there, and it's been bad, quite frankly. So I do hope that they find a rotation that is going to work. And I hope that they kind of stay with that as much as possible. It was something this team did last year where Nurse for 3 games would have a rotation. They'd win 3 in a row, and then he would totally change from that. So I hope moving forward after today's rotation, where they took Scotty out and then they brought him back in the first quarter, which I thought was key, not to bring him back in the second. And they put him with OG and Gary and Boucher and Precious. That was a good move. I think you can get away with Boucher and Precious on the court as long as those 3 are on the court with them. But if you don't have one of Gary or OG out there with Scotty, if Scotty's going to be out there, I can't see that having too much success. So the rotations have been bad this week. That's been my main thing, along with Darko's late game coaching in terms of you probably should have got Scotty back in earlier in that Boston game, because here's what would have happened if I was Boston. Foul Pirtle. Foul him every time that the Raptors go on offense. We'll send him to the line. He makes 1 point or he doesn't make any free throws. We'll take it. And Raptors were lucky that did not happen. But at the same time, you got to get Scotty back in. His defense was good on Tatum during that game on a few possessions, especially towards the end of the game. And yeah, just got to clean it up more. Maybe he's getting used to the team and stuff like that. But I think 13 games is enough of a sample size now, plus the preseason, plus training camp, to get an idea of your team.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with all that. I will zag a little bit where you guys have zigged, just to add something more. I haven't been happy with Darko, but I'm going to focus on Dennis, which is still a Darko problem. There are times when Dennis has channeled his inner self a little bit too much and not set up guys in places where they should be or at the right times. I think his game management, maybe because he hasn't been in that role in a while, specifically, his game management skills need a little bit of work at times. It's kind of like Darko. When you have the hot hand, go to the hot hand. If Scotty's rolling, go to Scotty. It's not that. I'm not overcomplicating it. I think sometimes people do. And I think that that's just really what could have been better from a bad standpoint. I wanted to see more of that. We talked about this today. I think what didn't you say the first 8 shots was Dennis or something like that?
He had 8 shots in the first quarter.
8 shots in the first
halfway through the first.
Oh, that's a lot of shots.
Yeah, he came off right around halfway through the first. He had 8 shots then.
Man, that's a lot. That's all I'm gonna say. And I get it. We need someone to take shots, but Dennis, I would prefer if it was at least 2 other guys, maybe Scotty Barnes, maybe Pascal Siakam. Just spread the wealth around. That's all. It's one thing that I think that Kyle Lowry really did a good job of, is he was probably one of the best game managers I've seen in ever. Now, I haven't seen as many games as other people. I'm sure someone else can name a better one, but he is definitely one of the best in my opinion in terms of managing the game, knowing when a guy needs to get going, knowing when a big man needs to get the ball, where to get guys to spot, when to push it in transition. How many times did we see Kyle Lowry, the other squad is sleeping and he's just like, all right, I'm going to zip it up, get a quick bucket and go back. But
it's a lost art right now, right? That is right now. I mean, there's a couple of guys, and our friend in this case here, Reese in this case, has always talked about a gentleman that got traded to Washington, Mr. Jones. That would be a nice pickup during the offseason that has that capability to read the game and say, oh, here's my hot hand. Oh, I haven't gotten this guy in after about 3-4 possessions. I got to give him a touch. It just knows those inner things. Time to push it. We've been playing too slow. And it's something that's been a lost art in this case, I think, overall in basketball. Because we got a lot of point guards who want to be gunning, right? And they don't really see what's going on in the game. And, and I think he, or unfortunately the gentleman that got injured in Washington, DeLon Wright, also has that ability to understand the game. As I said before, it's becoming a lost art. And if you can find a guy who could do so, especially a young player, man, that's a beautiful thing because it's not it's something it's hard it's something we can't take for granted because there's not a lot of them. And the funny thing is, the two guys in the team that actually understand it best are the two wings that usually handle the ball in this game. That's the thing. It's like, but why put the ball in their hands? Hey,
It's funny. Just by the way, I just want to make a quick point about stats. Just really minor, quick, because we'll have a bigger stat conversation later on today. In terms of focusing on one individual stat, for example, say box plus minus, right? I would say that focusing on a box plus minus stat or some stats like that where it incorporates what lineups you're on might skew things. So a good example is Mr. Jones. He has one of the worst box plus minuses in the league. He plays on Washington. Like, I think there's a reason why his box plus minus is bad. So I would not use that as the be all end all measure, especially when, at least from an all encompassing stat point of view, there are better stats. Now, this is not me saying anything about any Raptors player or anything like that. I've just seen people have statistical conversations in a way that is probably not uplifting of statistics. And I would hope that people do better. So with that being said, let's go to the ugly. Yeesh. So,
you know, he almost came off my ugly list, but the rest of it of the week was so bad that even though he had his best game of the season today, he can't escape my wrath. Jakob has just been brutal. I'm sorry. It's been brutal. I mean, it doesn't matter who the adversary is. If it's Gafford, if it's Lopez and playing pick and roll with Lillard, and to be fair, coach had a lot to do with that because he didn't put him in great positions. But there hasn't been much resistance in any scenario I can think of. You know, tonight was the first time I actually tweeted out as like, Jakob, when you had the block, I said, resistance? I can't believe it. What am I seeing here? You know? So, you know, and on offense, they're finally kind of using the way I think I personally would use them as you know, mostly the dunker spot. And they have, you know, some other stuff we discuss more than we ever guessed, but a little more high lows, which is good. That's good stuff. But my goodness, man, it's been rough. It's been rough. And I mean, and the thing is, we all know the story, man, what he represents or what he could have represented. And it makes it even rougher. That's why I keep on begging for it. I keep putting up the bat signal here, man, for when Coloco's coming back. My goodness. I don't know what's going to be in store for this week. Hopefully this Sunday was a harbinger of good things to come. But I got to say it, man. He can't get let off the hook after this week of play. So Jakob Poeltl was my ugly this week, man.
That's funny. Coach?
So I'm halfway there. Well, I basically am agreeing with Beyond, but against Washington, he was a minus 14. Now, we saw him against Gafford. It was like, you know, he was useless out there against Gafford in that game, more or less. Against Milwaukee, he was minus 17. We saw him Precious started the second half. He was that bad. So, and I thought that was a good move by Dark. What's that?
He turned Gafford into Wes Unseld.
Pretty much. Keem Olajuwon out there.
But Washington fans, old school Bullets fans, I got you, man. I got you.
The Boston game, he was slightly better. He was a +1 out there. Now, you know, the numbers do get a little bit better, but there was one positive that I came out of today's game with Detroit. One positive. The free throw shooting looks different. He's slowing it down more, and it looks a bit more fluid. He was 4 or 5, 80%. That's what I keep talking about. Jakob Poeltl, of all guys on this team, hit 80% today.
Right.
So maybe they found something with his free throw that can
Golf
at
clap.
least have him, have him 70 to 75% on the season. Shot 80% today, so I'm like, you know what? Kudos to him. I hope he get the gold chain, by the way. I don't know if he did or not, but I was rooting for him to get that because the way that they were using him in the pick and roll and stuff like that.
Boucher was gunning for that again, man. You saw how many shots he jacked up there.
Oh, he was trying. My other ugly, you're going to like this, Beyond. It's this team without OG to start the year. It's been ugly. So our offensive rating with Anunoby is 110.6. Without him, it's 101.6. It's almost a difference of like 10 points there. Defensive rating. With Anunoby, we are 102.3. Without him, we are 112.8. That's a net rating of about 8.4 offense and defense when he is on the floor. You know, I get it in terms he has limitations when he's dribbling the ball, trying to create, do too much in isolation, stuff like that. He's important on this team. His ability just to space the floor, for one, we saw it today a little bit. I worry every time he falls on the floor, just like Anthony Davis does, because there was a couple of times today I was like, Darko, get him out of the game. Just get him out. Same for Orlando.
It's like you were asking for trouble.
You were asking for trouble, Darko. But I got to say, this team without OG and Anunoby is a lot worse, certainly, than when he is playing. That's for sure. So I got to say, there are no heap of trouble when he's not playing.
Well, I'll just say a point of privilege here, man, when it comes to OG, because I almost, in theory, I can make my ugly OG's lack of attendance. Let's put it that way, man. It's getting a bit ridiculous.
I was actually going to go there.
Oh, you go there. I'll leave it to you. I'll just say this part about OG, your point. The biggest thing and reason why OG is so impactful, which I think sometimes we kind of just get lost, is like we saw it today. He's a good player. So therefore, less stress of putting those bad bench players out there for longer periods of time. If nothing else, he does anything else, he does that. You saw it now. We don't have to have four of them out there at one time. It's like, hello, hallelujah. So if he does nothing else and just plays good defense, even if he doesn't hit a shot, that alone saves us in this case from pretty much one of those things where less is more in this case, and less of that bench. It's a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, he's plus 46 in 251 minutes. Now, that's not including today. I don't know what it would be today. Truthfully, today, I don't put much into it because that was a blowout today. We need to see really if this is valid come Tuesday against Orlando and then Wednesday against Indiana. Then you're going to really find out, assuming that he plays in both those games, because you never know, that how important he is and if the numbers stand up to that.
Move sharp utensils away from him.
I mean, so yeah, I'll go with my ugly. But before I do that, I will say one thing. I forgot to mention that we played our first in-season tournament game. We obviously lost it against Boston, but it was a nice, it was nice to see us have. I mean, although the floor did a.
Yeah, man, get that court sorted out.
Yeah,
man. Seriously, man.
Gives me reminders of last year when a certain someone slipped in Dallas.
Yeah.
Whatever it is, whatever shine or spit and polish they put on it, get
someone
someone else's spit polish it a little different. I don't know. It didn't like that, but I did like the look of the court, and apparently it looks even better in person. So kudos to that. I think not all of the courts look, stellar. Some of the courts look decent, some of them look bad, some of them look good. This is, I think, one of the better courts. Now on to the ugly. Pirtle pick and roll. You guys, defense. You guys already mentioned it. Don't need to go further. It was bad for the most, except for today. But it's Detroit, so it's hard to read that. So we'll just leave it at that. Yeah. What I will say is this. Can someone get OG some sort of help at home? Because it's not like he's Larry Bird paving the driveway. I don't know if this man had a knife just as a PSA. If you have water in the sink, do not put a knife in the water, okay? Don't do it. It's for your own safety. I don't know if it was that. He was shaving with some new Gillette thing. I don't know what it was. I've never heard of many injuries. I know there's Andrew Bynum went bowling or whatever the heck.
Well, you had the mysterious one last year with Jaylen Brown, right? That's the closest one is apples to apples. Because it is what it is. I know there's plenty of conspiracy theories about it, whatever. All I know is you continue your OG thing. I do,
Yeah, I mean, listen. And for some reason, people keep see. We told you. I never said he was bad. Okay. No one said that he was bad. Okay, that's the most insane thing. We're just saying he's good in this role. That's why he's good on this team, because he has the right role on this team. When he dribbles too much, it's not good. But he didn't do that. I mean, he might not want to do that with a busted hand, but he didn't do that. When he's there, he has an impact. I will say that we played the Celtics without him and it still held him to 108. In the words of Darko, that's pretty darn good. So his impact is really on the offensive end in that role because right now he's one of the only guys who can consistently knock down an open shot from deep. It is very crucial. Whether or not he likes that role, I mean, we saw that today sometimes where he tried to, lay the ball up and, didn't really finish it. For now, I don't care about that stuff. But in terms of him in his current role, that's a good thing. I'll leave that at that.
Just a curiosity here, my math's not right. We played now 13 games. How many games has he missed of the 13 so far?
I think he's played 9. I think today was his 9th game that he's played.
Correct.
9. He played more than I thought. So he's already missed 4 games already out of 13 this season.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I'll end it off on a good note, people, don't worry. But yeah, the other bad is, yes, I think Darko throughout this week, he's learning and I'm glad he is. But to me, when you have a developmental staff or a staff that's focused on development, ideally not the whole staff should be developing themselves like they are in the G League. I would have liked if we had at least one former NBA, not WNBA head coach. I know someone else was like, oh, well, we have this one guy that has like the, and I said, well, sorry, where's the experience again? The WNBA. There's nothing wrong with the WNBA. I'm just saying there's a difference between this is the same people who are like, well, Becky Hammond, blah, 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 are the same people that are saying, well, you can't pick and choose when it applies. So all I'm saying is it would be nice to have one assistant that was, a little bit more experience to help with those things. It is not much that we can do about it right now. I mean, you could, but it might take too much time to do that. So it is what it is. But other than that, I thought, yeah, we got out of the week. We escaped the week, if you want to put it at that. It could have been a lot worse. It could have been a little bit better. But overall, I was happy with the week. I rated a B. I'm just kidding.
I predicted we would go 2-2. Actually, now that I look back, we should have beat Boston. Sorry.
Boston was a winnable game.
That was a winnable game.
Yeah.
And Pirtle did get the gold chain for this game, so good for him.
Nice. Well, and I'll also say the one other ugly that I will harp on, Darko, and I'm just kind of half joking, people, but it was just I found it funny. Okay, it's not really ugly, but it's more something that's funny, where it's like after the 39 points, 11 rebounds, 7 assists, 3 steals or whatever. And it's like you give the gold chain to Boucher. I'm sorry, that was the most ridiculous.
You and me both, man.
I remember we were talking during the post game, and it was like, I was like, I think they gave it to Boucher, and like I think it was you, Coach. You were like, no, you're lying, and I shared it, and you're like, oh my goodness. So listen, it's not a big deal, just because I know it's more of like a participation trophy or whatever the heck they give it to staff or whatever. But I just find it funny. Like that's all. Let it feed whatever narrative people want to have fun with in terms of that. But yeah, overall, I'm glad. We finally got a Scotty and Pascal game that was both were really, really good. So we will hopefully see more of that. I think both of these are going to be on the team for the foreseeable future, whether you like it or not. So you got to get those two going, and you got to figure out a way to make it work. We will talk about the numbers to do with that in the future episode, which is coming up, because later today we're going to be filming with Louis Zatzman. Ta-da! So with that being said, let's look at the week ahead, and let's look at the games that we have for the week ahead, unless either of these two gentlemen want to interrupt me for anything that I've missed.
No, man. Let's get.
Okay. Well, we just faced the 4 teams that we did. We have 4 more games coming up. And so that starts. Coach actually talked about one that would be Orlando, where you get the Spider-Man meme. You look like me, I look like you. We then play Indiana, who I don't know how the game is going right now because I stopped watching it, but they were getting a shellacking. We play the Bulls, who are in turmoil, and we play Cleveland, who is a very interesting up and down team right now. So it will be an interesting week. It's as we see people, the schedule is softening a little bit, which is kind of nice. So, any thoughts about any of those games that you want to kind of pick apart really quickly before talking about, I guess, our potential record?
One thing just about today's games, I mean, NBA might want to look into playing these early Sunday afternoon games because, boy, there were some beatdowns going on this afternoon, man. Like, some folks didn't get the alarm on there when it happened. Like, I think there's no game that was under 20 in this case here for the first three games. So, yeah, they might want to kind of fall back on those afternoon games till late in the year when guys are used to it. I'm not sure they had their NFL bets or the prop bets or what was going on, but it wasn't pretty. As far as this week, this is going to be interesting because let me tell you something. Yeah, everybody talk about all this vaunted Raptor defense. With the bunch of the 14 games for the most part this week, you better be able to score some points this week. Let me tell you, if you think you're holding people down to 102 points with this crowd, you might get away with it, Orlando. You ain't getting away with it, Indiana. Probably on a good night in Cleveland, you ain't getting away with it. And I can't remember who's the other team you had in this case. They're all Eastern.
The Bulls.
Yeah, the Bulls.
The Bulls is the one other team you could get away with it. But we'll probably let the Bulls off the hook because we tend to do that all the time. So we'll see how that goes. But the Orlando Indiana games, the ones I'm really looking at because to some extent they're kind of our neighborhood right now, and I'm kind of curious to see because these are the type of games you're going to have to win if you want to be that playoff team. If you want to get that 5 or 6 seed and not have to be in the playing game, you got to beat all these teams that are kind of in your neighborhood. You just can't be beating the children of the poor or the sisters of the poor and think you're going to get away with that. You got to beat some of these guys and then get a couple of games you can against top teams. But these are the type of games you have to win. So, and if you want to throw in Chicago in there, sure. But all this week, all these teams are kind of like around their neighborhood, and it's going to be interesting to see what happens.
Yeah. Orlando's the best defensive team in the NBA, I think. Kenyon, you had said the Spider-Man may pointing at each other and stuff like that. The Raptors are the 8th best defensive team. So, Orlando's scoring, as I look at it now, they don't have one guy averaging 20 a game, but it's balanced scoring. So they have 5 guys that I can see right now are averaging over 11 points per game. Both the Wagner brothers, Jalen Suggs, Ben Caro, and Cole Anthony. Suggs is also averaging over 2 steals per game. So you're really going to have to be mindful when he's on the court. You probably, whoever he's guarding, probably want to stay away from them a little bit. And Jonathan Isaac, he's had some games where he's actually been playing pretty good. And I remember 4 or 5 years ago, man, when he was on the court for Orlando, he was actually guarding Siakam very well at that time. Siakam's a lot better now than what he used to be, of course, but this is a long team similar to Toronto, but at the same time, they have some players. Banchero shooting about 39% from 3. Gary Harris, 46% from 3. So this is going to be a slugfest against Orlando. Indiana, we all know, offensive rating. I think they have the top offensive team in the NBA, actually. And I'm pretty sure they have one of the top benches as well for bench scoring. So you're really going to have to cross your T's and dot your I's in this game. I think there's stretch. So we played the first game today, 8 games in 13 days. I'm looking for us to go 5-3 in that stretch. I think you have to see, to have some momentum moving into December, January, as it becomes a grind for every NBA team. But if you really think you are with some of these teams who are doing fairly well right now, the Orlandos, the Clevelands, the Brooklyns, and stuff like that, I think you got to beat these teams, including the Knicks as well. I think the Knicks are a bit better than some of those teams for sure.
You want to go into the records or what we think, or you have some thoughts on this?
Yeah, I'm just thinking. For me, Indiana is the team that scares me the most in terms of how they're playing, their advantages, as well as our disadvantages. Orlando doesn't really scare me quite as much, mainly because their rim protection and they're down a very important player in Wendell Carter Jr., if I'm not mistaken. So, I think after that, the Bulls, I think we'll get revenge on the Bulls. And Cleveland, I think we play them really well until, in my opinion, I think Cleveland fans are finally coming around slowly. That,
Interesting tonight without Mitchell.
yeah, like I think that they play better without two small guards. That's just me.
That's the point I'll make exactly. It's not, you pick whichever one you want to be sitting, but it was interesting to see what happened tonight. That's all I have to say.
And part
Yeah.
of the reason also for that is because you put the ball in Mobley's hands a little bit more. I think Mobley's a really good playmaker, but I think it goes beyond just putting the ball in his hands. I just think also just from having two small guards, there's challenges in it, especially come playoff time. So depending on who's there, but in general we play them pretty well. So I'm not really worried about that. So just to go straight into the records, I am hoping that we go 3-1. We should go 3-1. Splitting is okay, but you have not met the assignment, in my opinion, for this week.
That's a great way of saying it. Because I am right there with you. Like this, in theory, should be a 3-1 week. Like like it is a disappointment if you're 2-2, right? So like I totally agree because there's some winnable games. I think. I agree with you. I think the game's most problematic to me is possibly Indiana. That there's ways I can see how we could win it, but it's more to do with the exposure of our bench is what I'm concerned about when you play Indiana, because there's gonna be no let up. That's where I'm getting concerned. I think you can get away with the bench for the other three matchups probably, but I don't think you're getting away with it with Indiana, and that's where I think the difference is going to be.
Yeah. I think actually, truthfully, Tuesday against Orlando, a guy like Pirtle without Wendell Carter Jr. in the game, with his size, probably going to be key, along with Siakam, of course. Um, it's going to be interesting with the bench play, what that's like, because our starters matching up with these teams, I really don't have much of an issue. I don't think there's going to be too much of a discrepancy. But like Beyond just said, when you get to that second quarter or you get to that midway through the third quarter, what's this going to look like? That's going to be the key probably to most of these games.
And the one point about the Orlando game, which I think what makes that a little different, it has its own challenges, is that, and maybe tonight was a bit of a precursor of what we might see in that game, is you're going to have to find more clever ways to get that post touch to Siakam. It can't we just run down the street and we just post up a guy, because on that team, it won't matter much. So you're going to have to be very clever to see which matches you can get to exploit. So it might have to be a little bit, a little bit of, a back pick, something like that, and whatever it might be to get him a little looser, because you're going to have to do a lot more of that than just running down and trying to do early work, as we like to say, for a post up, because it won't matter with that group. So I am curious to see what they do there, because in some ways it's very much similar to a bit like a Milwaukee roster. You're going to have to find ways to kind of get him on the move, and maybe more screen, to your point, with Pirtle at the top of the key, and get him moving downhill against these dudes a bit more. So that there's things like that you have to look at. And ditto with Scotty, right? That's the same thing.
I think those are all great points. So I don't really have anything more that I want to add about this past week. I'm looking forward to this week. I hope all the Raptors fans are too. Thank you, everyone, for all the support. We're now adding subscribers again as the season has begun and people have started to get back into Raptors games. Yeah, you see Beyond with a Carter jersey, or it could be in a Amir Johnson jersey.
Come on now. Come on now. You know your boy, right? Don't disrespect the mirror, man. A good, strong Raptor, but come on now.
So doesn't matter when you're getting into this, but definitely hit the like, comment, subscribe, all those buttons, all those things. Please do that. It helps me to project this channel out. People seem to like the roundtable discussions, or I've heard people say it feels like a barbershop type feel. So I enjoy these conversations. But before we get out of here, I just want to say, I kind of hinted it before, we will have a special guest. Louis Zatzman is going to be on, so stay tuned. I'm hoping that comes out around maybe Wednesday or Thursday. It depends. We'll see. Just really it really just depends on when I get it out, but it's going to be a more in-depth conversation about some of the lineups, obviously, before the new data kind of gets interjected into land. So with that being said, it's been fun, and that's all, and peace.
Peace.